Hello everyone, welcome to Glass Half Dead. I have just gotten back from Warhammer World, and while I was there, I managed to quite literally hand over two sides of A4 paper and ask two of the six guys that wrote the rules for Kill Team, what did you mean by these? Or how should we be playing these? So here I'm just going to give you my own homemade FAQ. Obviously, this is not officially signed off and sanctioned by Games Workshop, and I have no proof that they ever actually said any of this, but I assure you I was there. This is what they told me. Okay, some of you may be coming over from Reddit, and I asked for all of your questions there. I asked as many as I could, but I didn't want to be too crazy, and some of these questions are from my own guys, my boys. What's up, everybody? From 2 videos ago when I asked for anything that you wanted answered. So disclaimer at the top here. This is I just asked for questions that you guys wanted answers for. That's literally it. GW doesn't endorse this at all. I just wanted to know what was up. So it's all unofficial. I will say that they told me that the FAQ is coming soon, probably in a few weeks. However, I have seen online people saying, "Oh, they told me it was ready and it's going to be coming out right after this tournament. They're just waiting for the tournament to see if any new issues come up." Who knows who's correct on that one? What this person says sounds correct. I mean, doesn't take that long to clarify some rules, and waiting for the tournament makes total sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if I'm getting this video out just before the FAQ, like a few days before, but we will see. Okay, so this one wasn't even really a question for me until I asked it, or until I came across it. Yeah, I always just read it very simply. Um, and oh, so I will also add that for all of these questions, okay, the guy I asked, I gave him the thing, and he opened the book, turned to the page, pointed out the paragraph that it is referenced that is referenced, and said, "Ah, because we put this in, it means this." So obviously, in their mind, there is an internal logic to everything they've put here, although they do agree that some things were just worded poorly. So, first question up: how many flesh wounds before a model dies? Do you die as soon as you check off the third flesh wound, or when you take the following flesh wound? This is a question because if we turn to page 32 of our rulebook, so you guys can follow along here, it says, if a model suffers a flesh wound and all of the flesh wound boxes on their data card are marked, it is taken out of action instead. Okay. Now, some people have read that to mean that the second 3 of the boxes are ticked, he's dead. And so, sure enough, or taken out of action, sure enough, once you have ticked that third box, the rules writer pointed me to this bit and says, if a model suffers a flesh wound and the key word there is and, okay? If a model suffers a flesh wound and all of the flesh wound boxes on the data card are marked, they both have to happen, okay? Basic elementary English we're working at here, guys. But so, a model can still be on the board and alive and have 3 flesh wounds. The fourth one always kills, but they can have 3. There you go. That was a nice, quick, easy one. How do flip belts work? It says they ignore terrain, so can they move through solid walls? Blah 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 blah. Obviously. So, the guy did admit that flip belts is worded poorly. Let's go to how it's actually worded, shall we? For those that want to turn to page 149, flip belt. The model can move across other models and terrain as if they were not there. In addition, it never suffers falling damage and never falls on another model. If it would, instead place this model as close as possible to the point where it would have landed. This can bring it within 1 inch of an enemy model. So again, they admitted, he said, yep, flip belt is worded poorly, that's in the FAQ. They didn't give me a full breakdown of how flip belt works. However, what they did say, that when it says you can move across other models and terrain as if they were not there, They don't mean terrain doesn't exist for them. They simply meant that you ignore vertical height. That was a clarification they gave. They didn't go into any further detail for me. They just said it'll be in the FAQ. Again, this is just a bit of a clear up that I asked for. From the way line of sight is worded, the tip of the model's gun controlled line of sight to a model. However, the enemy model would not be able to return fire as the tip of the gun is not enough to draw line of sight to. Is this correct? No, it's not. That was not correct at all. The way line of sight works is that any part of your model can draw line of fire to any part of the enemy model. Any part, even the very tip of a gun. If all it can draw line of fire to is the tip of the enemy's gun, the last millimeter, that is part of your model drawing an imaginary 1 millimeter line, 1 millimeter thick line to any part of the other enemy model. The only reason line of sight is questioned there is because of a mix of the line of sight rules and the obscurement rules. Any part of your model can draw a line of sight to any part of the enemy model. The only reason there is a bit that talks about antennas, tips of guns, all that stuff, is for obscurement rules. So, if you can see the whole of an enemy model, but a little bit of antenna is behind a wall, or the tip of their gun is behind a wall, they are not obscured. You can still see the whole of the bulk of their model. If you can draw a line of sight clearly to the whole of their legs, arms, and torso, they are not obscured. If only their gun is behind a wall, they're not obscured. However, if the only thing you can see is the very tip of their gun, you still have line of sight to that. What is the point of taking two identical close combat weapons? So I had long held belief as people on Reddit had convinced me that you could, let's say you had two combat blades, whatever, and you had two attacks, you could swing with one attack using one of the combat blades and potentially do one flesh wound with that, and then swing your second attack with the second combat blade, potentially getting another chance at a flesh wound. Okay? He said no, that's not the case at all. There is no benefit. That is not how that rule works. That's not a thing. I said, why? He said very simply that he was aware, the rules team were aware that for the people that have been in the game for a long time, they didn't want to invalidate any of the cool models they've already built. And so they just kind of did it as a rule of cool. You can technically take that on your model. Doesn't give you any benefit, but it will be a legal model. So there you go. There's no benefit to taking two identical close combat weapons. Is falling its own form of movement and therefore can't be combined with other moves? Or is it effectively a free amount of downwards movement regardless of whether you're doing it when you're normal moving, charging, advancing, etc.? I think we've all been playing falling correctly on that one. That was just a clarification. Yes, you can move 3 inches, full 5, and then keep moving the rest of your move. Or it can be part of a charge. Yeah, falling is fine. No problems there. If a model starts the movement phase within 1 inch of an enemy model, but when it is that model's time to move, it is no longer within 1 inch of an enemy, what are its movement options? So for example, if someone wins the initiative and makes a retreat move, can the model that was retreated from charge in its movement phase? No, it can't. This is one that's very clear in the rules, but people just didn't think it sounded correct and how it should be played. The letter of the rules is how it's meant to be played on this one. Your only options are to stay stationary or fall back yourself. But do note that fall back, despite the name, you can move forwards. So this one, if a tactic says that when the target is obscured, you gain +1 to hit, is that +1 cancelling out the -1 of the obscured rule and then adding another 1? Or does the +1 of the tactic work alongside the -1 of obscure, leaving you with a net gain of 0? Yes. If you have anything like, there's a bunch of things in here that do it, but I know that Necrons do, so I'll turn to that. Page 153, targeting routines. One command point. Use this tactic when you choose a model in your kill team to shoot in the shooting phase. Add 1 to hit rolls for that model against targets which are obscured. Effectively, You get the -1 from obscured, but then you get the +1 from that tactic, giving you a net gain of 0. There's no questions about that. That's how that works. A level 1 scout's ability allows you to reroll advanced rolls for that model. However, the level 1 scout tactic allows you to either increase the model's move characteristic by 2 inches this phase, or reroll the dice when advancing, which their ability already lets them do. So why is there a tactic that doubles up on the scout's ability, especially when you can't reroll a reroll? It was a mistake. There you go. There was no hint about whether or not it's supposed to let you do something else. They just said it was a mistake. So I assume that the scout's tactic will change and only allow you to increase the model's move characteristic by 2 inches. For a command point, sounds a bit crap, but okay, it's fine. Sniper rifles have the rule that on a wound roll of a 6+, the target suffers a mortal wound in addition to any other damage. If you inflict 0 other damage, does the mortal wound go through? Also, does this damage occur at the same moment as the original damage, or does it occur after the original damage, allowing for potentially causing 2 flesh wounds from this single shot? I've got to be honest on this one. He kind of just pointed me to a few paragraphs in the rulebook, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. There's not really a rules question. It's just read the rulebook. So if you are shooting a multiple wound model, then yes, you would roll to sort out the. I believe they said the mortal wound occurs first. Then, once the mortal wound is inflicted, you then finish the attack phase, not phase, flow chart, whatever it is, for the original wound, for the original damage, potentially giving you 2 wounds. However, if you're shooting, as most things in this game are, a single wound model, as it says very clearly under the How Are Mortal Wounds Resolved panel in the rules section, if you inflict a mortal wound, all the rest of the damage goes away and you simply get 1 roll at the mortal wound. So if you rolled a 6+ to wound with a sniper rifle, you just cause a single mortal wound, basically, which then just means you skip the armor phase, the armor save, and you roll that. Cool. Okay, so further to the mortal wound question, some view mortal wounds as their own separate attacks, even when combined with other mortal wounds. For example, if something causes D3 mortal wounds and they rolled individually, are they rolled individually, potentially putting 3 flesh wounds on a target, or are they dealt as if they were standard wounds, having a potential of inflicting only a single flesh wound? Again, if it is a multi-wound model, you will do all of those mortal wounds. However, clearly says under the mortal wounds, I'll read it to you. Some attacks inflict mortal wounds. These are so powerful that no armor or force field can withstand their fury. Each mortal wound inflicts 1 point of damage on the target model. Cool. Do not make a wound roll or saving throw, including invulnerable saves, against a mortal wound. Just inflict damage to the model as described on page 31. If a mortal wound reduces a model to 0 wounds, any further mortal wounds directed against this model by this attack are not resolved, and the player whose model caused the mortal wound makes an injury roll for that model. If you are causing D3 or 3 mortal wounds, and that first mortal wound takes the model down to 0 wounds, and so they have to roll an injury roll, your other 2 mortal wounds go away and don't do anything. Simple. It says it right there in the rulebook. They do not count as separate attacks. They are all a single attack. That does change later when we get into the very complicated ruling of heavy rock drills, but bear with me, we'll come to that. With tactics such as decisive shot, is there a player turn window? By which I mean, does the player with the initiative have the option to use the tactic in which that whole paragraph there means if I play decisive shot first, does the second player ever have an option of countering me, or can I say, oh well, you had the initiative and you decided not to play decisive shot, but I played it, so now you don't get to play it? Nope. There is no window there. You can just play it whenever you want, and you can react to the other person laying down their decisive shot, and you can pay your 2 CP to try and get in there before they do. Roll off against them. So there you go. Tau drones have savior protocols. Say when an enemy attack successfully wounds it, you can inflict a mortal wound on the drone. Does successfully wound mean that the roll to wound is successful and the armor save is lost, or only after the roll to wound is successful, effectively losing the chance of taking any armor save, whether on the original model or the drone? Yep, so that means as soon as the wound roll goes through, you activate drone protocols. There is no armor save. You're basically swapping an armor save, so losing the armor, any armor save, to have the drone take the damage. Okay, so Mind Shackle Scarabs was a big one. I'm gonna read Mind Shackle Scarabs first, just so that we all know what we're talking about here. Okay, Mind Shackle Scarabs. Use this tactic at the start of the shooting phase. Pick an enemy model within 6 inches of a model from your kill team and roll 2d6. If the result is higher than the enemy model's leadership characteristic, you can immediately make a shooting attack with one of that model's ranged weapons as if it were a model from your kill team. So there's two things here. Let's go over it. I'm just going to read this paragraph to you because I already spent the time to type this paragraph out to somebody on Reddit. So I've already done it. But I'm going to read it because why not? So basically, Mind Shackle Scarabs doesn't override any shooting rules at all. If a shaken model is shaken, it can't shoot, whether it's your turn or theirs. Just because your Mind Shackle Scarabsing it doesn't change the basic fundamentals of how shooting works. So still, shaken models can't shoot. Further, if you Mind Shackle Scarab a model that is next to another model from their team, they then become your model, and that makes them within 1 inch of an enemy model. Used to be their friend, but you Mind Shackle Scarabs them, they are now an enemy. So you so would have to follow standard shooting rules, and they would only be able to fire a pistol. Okay, and there is a rules difference between picking a model to shoot and making a shooting attack. In the shooting phase, you are picking a model to shoot, and that can only be done once. However, Mind Shackle Scarabs isn't picking a model to shoot, it's making a shooting attack. And there is no inherent limit to making a shooting attack, much like how you can Overwatch as many times as you want. There is no actual limitation to how many times you can shoot a weapon. So therefore, Mind Shackle Scarabs doesn't stop that model from shooting in their own phase. So that's not only a clarification on Mind Shackle Scarabs, but also on how shooting in general works a little bit. So hopefully we can clear up future shooting based issues ourselves. Again, they said that the FAQ was close, maybe a few weeks out, but as I was asking these Mind Shackle Scarabs questions, they were jotting them down. So expect Mind Shackle Scarabs to be cleared up completely in the FAQ. Again, they were only giving me their initial read on how these rules should work. It might all change when the FAQ comes out. Metabolic Overdrive has 2 printings. What are we supposed to do with that? They just said that's in the FAQ. They actually didn't answer it at all. So I can't help you there, guys. Sorry. Uh, does Tesla proc on an unmodified 6, or can it be affected by pluses and minuses? It can be affected. There you go. Easy one. Back to the neck ones. Prime reanimation protocols reads: use this tactic when an injury roll is made for a model from your kill team. Roll an additional dice and apply the lowest result. Is this tactic played before the injury roll is rolled or after the injury roll is rolled so that you already know the result? Bit of a worrying one here. The guy, he gave me the answer, which was, oh yeah, that seems a bit vague, and he would allow them to play it either way. But he didn't take any notes on that one. So whether that means it's already been FAQ'd and he just kind of forgot what the answer was, or he didn't think it was an issue, I don't know. So I don't think they're going to cover this one in the FAQ because he didn't write anything down. So play this one how you want, guys. Yeah, you can roll your injury rolls and say, actually, I'm going to die. Then play your prime reanimation protocols because that gives you a much bigger advantage. There you go. Why can you take 2 Intercessor Gunners? Uh, as Oh bit of a story here, guys. So firstly, one of them can be a heavy, no, a demolitions. So that's interesting in itself. However, there was a little bit of joking between the two rules guys that maybe auxiliary grenade launcher was getting an FAQ. They didn't, it was a bit wink wink nudge nudge. I don't know what they're talking about. Speculation might be that auxiliary grenade launcher becomes an assault weapon, much like other grenade launchers are. But I've got to admit, they then referenced having to FAQ other grenade launchers from other armies, like Astra Militarum. So expect something in the FAQs about grenade launchers in some manner. I don't know though. That's just speculation. DS8 turrets. I asked the big one, can you take one or two? It's one of those questions where he kind of looks at me and says, what are you talking about? Of course you can take two. Why would you only be able to take one? I said, oh, well, because they have the same name, and it has max one and nothing else does that. And he was just like, well, no, they have different keywords. I don't know if he said they have different keywords, but he just said you could take two. There you go. Problem solved. Would you ever take two? I don't think it's worth the 13 points to have somebody sit at the back of the field, but you do you. Good for you. How are rock drill wounding sorted out? Right, so I asked this now. Have to admit, guys, at this point, this was the next day. This was Sunday. This was the tournament day. And so the guys that did the actual rules writing had left. They weren't there. This was asked to the judge. So the guy that had overall say of any rules questions, this was the guy you go to. And this was his ruling on the day. He didn't say that this is how it should be played. He said that he is the judge and this is how he would call it if he had to call it. So there are two questions for the heavy rock cutter and the heavy rock drill. Over to page 188, guys. We're going to go over the heavy rock cutter and the heavy rock drill. Oh man, this video has gone on way longer than I expected. I'm just reading out a page of rules. Christ. I'll read it for you. Heavy rock cutter. Strength times 2, AP minus 4, damage 2. Okay. Roll a d6 each time a model suffers damage from this weapon. If you roll higher than the model's remaining number of wounds, it is instantly taken out of action. When attacking with this weapon, yep, you must subtract 1 from the hit roll. So roll a d6 each time a model suffers damage from this weapon. If you roll higher than the model's remaining number of wounds, it is instantly taken out of action. So that's pretty standard. Not much going on with the heavy rock cutter. The question is, I believe, again, I'm not a Gene Stealer Cults player. I really just handed the judge the book and said, "Can you answer this, please?" And he kind of walked me through it. So maybe I'm not covering the rules that are confusing. I don't know. So let's say, so who can take the heavy rock cutter? Let's use an actual real world example here. Is it the aberrants? No, the hybrids? Yes, the hybrids. They get 2 attacks, right? So you're using a heavy rock cutter, you get 2 attacks, and you're doing damage too. So if you hit twice, you're doing 4 damage. Does that count as a single time you're doing damage? Or does that count as multiple times you are doing damage? So are you rolling a d6 each time, or are you rolling a d6? Blah. So, the way this works is actually relatively simple. So you are dealing damage every attack. So if you have 2 attacks, you would roll the special rule for the heavy rock cutter twice per successful damage. The fact that you are doing D2, the fact that you are doing 2 damage is irrelevant. It is each time you make an attack. So if you have a single attack, you would roll, and you successfully go through that flowchart diagram to successfully deal damage. You then roll on a d6. If you have 2 attacks and you make it with both of them, you roll 2. If you have 3 attacks, you roll 3. Cool. Again, I didn't really know the question I was asking. Sorry, Gene Stealer Cults guys. Heavy rock drill. Roll a d6 each time a model suffers damage from this weapon. On a 2+, the model suffers a mortal wound and you can roll another d6. This time the model suffers a mortal wound on a 3+. Keep rolling a d6, increasing the score required to cause the mortal wound by 1 each time, until the model is taken out of action or the roll has failed. So again, you have to remember that even if you are, rolling with 3 attacks, or you're a combat specialist, so you're rolling 4 attacks with this, the only reason you are rolling 4 dice at a time is the fast rolling rule. You are actually rolling a single dice for your attack. You are rolling a single attack dice that goes through and that hits. Okay, it hits. I attacked. Great. I wounded. Great. They failed the armor save. Great. Then you have caused damage. Then you roll a d6. And then you go through this entire thing that it states here, uh, wrecking them, frankly. Then you have completed a single attack. You go back, you roll another single dice. Yes, you have to do this 4 times. Yes, it's a very long, complicated thing, but that's the way it works. And actually, I think that if you're having rules issues on that kind of thing, guys, take away the fast rolling rule, which allows you to roll multiple dice at a time, and remember that you are actually rolling everything singularly. You are rolling a single attack, a single wound roll, a single armor save. You may be rolling 4 dice, but that's just you attempting to speed the game up. Bring it back down, roll a single dice at a time, and actually these rules kind of make a bit more sense and can clear themselves up. Ooh, okay, this has been a long one. I hope that's cleared some things up for you guys. Again, I'm pretty damn sure that the FAQ is going to be coming out very soon, so don't worry. However, until then, I hope this has been useful for you. I'd like to say a big thank you to everybody out there that gave me rules questions. And also a big thank you to everybody out there that attempted to answer those rules questions. You know, some of you out there got, I think, every answer right. So, this really does come back to that outside of 1 or 2 poorly worded rules, if you just read the rulebook and understand it very clearly, you will probably get most of the rules correct, as the designers intended. Okay. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. Let me know what your thoughts are about any of these rulings. Let me know if you have any more questions. I can't answer them. I'm not going back to Warhammer World for quite some time, but it would be great if you do still have questions. Feel free to ask them. Maybe I can answer them. Who knows? Awesome. This has been Glass Half Dead, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.